essentially, you think about it as a highway system. This is the superhighway. We
Right.
send a lot of traffic through fiber optics, and then at the end we break it down into smaller cables, some of which may go fiber right to somebody's house, some of which may break down and translate into a copper connection to somebody's house or business.
Oh, right.
Right?
Okay. These individual strands go to
That's just
that's just the sheathing. But as you can see, as the heat gets to it, glass is, anything is susceptible to heat. You'll never find anything that won't break down. But what happens to it is it melts and then it burns in half. So this is what happens to it. It just melts, burns in half, and that's why we had 19 of these that went under that bridge.
19 of the fiber?
19 fiber cables. You'll get one fiber that can feed, because of the technology, can feed high-speed data. It can feed up to thousands of customers if we put the electronics at the end of it.
Okay. So here's what fiber optics is. If I had hair, I'd pull out a strand of it. It's a hair-thin strand of glass that we send light signals through. And what it does is the light goes through, it sort of bounces off the walls of the glass, and it's all microscopic, so you can't really see it. But because we're able to use technology that bends and sends those signals at different angles, we can send multiple signals through the same strand or two strands of glass, depending upon the technology. And so it's a highly efficient way to transmit a lot of traffic, rather than having two individual wires for every single connection, or 4 wires depending upon the kind of technology.
How many customers do you think that is?
It's hard to tell, right? See, here's the problem. If you look at this conduit, and this tells you part of the story here, right? This conduit is partially burned, which the cable inside was partially burned. So we had some stuff that was bad, but we have some stuff that's good. So we've got some, even in the cables that were damaged, we have customers that are working alongside customers that are not working. So the hard thing to predict, we've had other incidents where somebody takes a backhoe underground and cuts through an entire cable. Then we know for certain everybody in that cable's out. This is an incident, an more unusual set of circumstances where we're sort of, we know half the story or a part of the story, in that only part of the cable is damaged. Some may be on that verge of going under and going bad. We don't know that until it does. So we got to kind of work through every customer as we find them and try to restore them as quickly as possible. So as Bill mentioned, our restoration strategy was this. First of all, we had to get some of our own network surveillance stuff up. And what that means is, in order to restore other customers, we had to have good control of our network. So we did our network operations circuits first, so we then could move on to help other customers. Then we get into fixing public safety. 911, obviously a very important customer in this equation. Had to emphasize that 911 calls were answered throughout this. The system worked as the state designed it, which is, if one answering point goes down, it is automatically rerouted to a backup. And so we had that happen in a number of instances. So it worked as designed. People's calls get answered. But we want to make sure that we restore those back to their original place as quickly as possible. So 911 becomes a priority. And then we decided to work on the fiber optic circuits first, because we could get the most number of customers restored as quickly as possible. So we did that first, and I think as Phil sent out information to you yesterday, we did 12,000 fiber optic connections in between Monday morning and yesterday. So you think about taking two pieces of hair, glass, and getting them to match up exactly. Right? It is a hard thing to do. We have very sophisticated, very expensive machines that help us do that. But we have to have an exact match, or the fiber doesn't work correctly. Right. So it's a painstaking process. The cuts that we make in order to join the two sides together have to be perfect, they have to be clean, and they have to be spliced together, or we have to start all over again. So now we're turning to the copper. And so we're taking those individual cables, as we described, and moving customers from bad cables and bad pairs of wires onto good pairs. And it's a painstaking customer by customer process. And that's frankly going to take a little while to do.